Please stand up, there we go, on your feet. Give a massive round of applause. There we go, on your feet. Round of applause. There we go.
How cool is today, by the way? I've been walking around, like hanging out with all the founders here. How many people are founders of companies? Okay, all right, most. And what are the rest of you doing? Oh, you're a founder. Okay, you are. I think it's pretty incredible when you get all of these founders in one room, and I've been talking to all sorts of people today, and I think we're all fascinated by people. Am I right? I think we're fascinated with people and why they do what they do, which is why we're trying to build these fantastic products. And the same is true for me, because I've spent the last 5 years interviewing the most fascinating people in the entire planet, and I capture it on video and I upload it to YouTube. That's my business model. You like that? And over that course, I've spoken to members of parliament, I've spoken to rock stars, astronauts, Hollywood actors, and the odd CEO of a billion-dollar company. And right now, our interview has been watched 50 million times. It's a little crazy. I was actually at YouTube headquarters yesterday, and they told me for every minute that goes by, they upload 400 hours of video. Right? Mind-boggling, and is going up. And what do you all see on your social media feeds these days? What do we see? What do we see? Video. It's everywhere. Even on LinkedIn now, right? And it's autoplay video. And what do? I block it. You block it. I like. Who does ad blockers here? Okay, smart. Everyone else is like, what? I do too. But it's video and it's autoplay video. You, sir, come on up here. Come up here. This guy, he stopped me in the back, and what did you say?
I said what you do is awesome.
That's why I like him already. He said, the good thing about London Real is that it's effing real. That's what you said, right? Okay, we try. We try.
And it's appreciated.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Interviews I've listened to, people sort of have canned questions, right? If you listen to his stuff, it's real. It says it in the name.
I'll pay you later. It's good stuff. Well, I love video. You know, I think video is a huge part of the story, and if we see it, it's cropping up everywhere. I mean, at first it was on Facebook, then the autoplay on Twitter, Instagram, and now LinkedIn, right? The hallowed grounds of Microsoft LinkedIn. It's now autoplaying, and we can't not watch it, right? What's wrong with us? I think as humans, we have to see what each other is doing. And that's what I do. For the past 5 years, I live and I breathe video. I capture people's souls on video, I feel. And if you're in that chair, I've got 7 cameras pointed at you in high definition, and I really believe I capture a piece of you that it only happens at that moment. And your grandkids are going to see it, and your great-grandkids, and I honestly think these things are going to be watched probably billions of times, you know, over the next few hundred years. And some of my episodes, well, not many views yet, but we've had quite a few views on them, and I'm going to talk about one very shortly. And so I think video storytelling is essential. And I think everyone here needs to think about that for their company. And when I talk about video, I'm not talking about most of the things you see on LinkedIn or Facebook. Those are advertisements. It's like, let me get your attention, let me show you my product and what it does, and then we move on. But what I focus on is the art of the story, and it's very complicated. So why is a story important? Well, how many of us judge a book by its cover? Thank you for being honest, right? And you don't?
I do, yeah.
You do, okay, that's good. And, you know, and so do I. We preconceive other people based on stereotypes. And that's because we should. That's why we're here still running around, because we make quick judgments and make decisions. But oftentimes, first impressions don't tell the whole story, do they? One of my most famous guests of all time is one of the greatest British athletes ever. And for 6 years running, from 1992 to 1997, he was considered the absolute best in his field by his peers, by the fans, judged #1 for 6 years in a row. I can't name many athletes in many sports that can say that. Olympians, rugby players, cricket, even though I'm from America, they don't come to mind. He said to me during the interview, he said, Brian, at one point I had trained so hard and lost so much body fat that the bones of my feet would grind against the floor because I no longer had any padding underneath. I mean, do you understand the kind of mental discipline it takes not to eat that and to train that way? And yet he wouldn't go to the BBC to tell his story. He refused because he knew they were going to screw it up. And I guarantee they would have. Do you want to know why they would have? Well, because this is him. This is Mr. Dorian Yates, 6-time Mr. Olympia. And what do you think right away? What do you think? Oh, gross, right? A bodybuilder. Huh? He must do steroids. He must be a meathead, right? You're judging a book by its cover, as you should. But for 90 minutes, I dove into this gentleman's head, and I found about what it takes to have so much mental discipline to fight against all those urges we have in our body. He trained 16 hours a day. Every single one of his workouts is written down. He's got 4,000 pages of every workout he ever did. He was disciplined. And I asked him, when you won, did you celebrate? He said, no, Brian, I didn't celebrate. He said, because when I went on that stage, I knew it was not possible for any other human to have trained as hard as I did, to have dedicated their life as much as I did. So there was no question in my mind I would win. And so I didn't celebrate because I was supposed to win. And that's the kind of mentality. He competed with himself. And to be honest, all the great guests I've had, they compete with themselves. And that's why they're so great. And the reason we captured that story is because all of you now have just connected with why he does what he does. Not what. The what is the body, the slick down pecs, the huge muscles. But the why is the dedication, is the perseverance. It's a lot of the same elements that got you here today and will get you on that stage upstairs maybe someday. Discipline. And we told that story and we captured it in video over time. And this is a lesson we learned from one of our friends who stopped by London Real. And I don't know if anyone knows who this is. His name is Sinek. He has, I think, the most watched TED Talk of all time, or the second most watched, 27 million views. And you might have heard of his concept. It's called Start With Why. Now he knows, right? And his idea is most companies, they try to tell you what they do. I mean, how many in here is the first thing you want to tell people? This is what we do. This is what my app does. This is my user experience. This is my user interface. It's great, and you must have remarkable products to win. But the why, that's what people connect with. That's what makes unicorns. That's what gets you on the stage upstairs. The why. And until your customers know that and they can feel that, the greatest product in the world isn't going to get you to that level. And so we took a note from Simon, and every interview that I do, I try to craft and pull out the why from people so people can really understand this narrative. And I want you to think about your why right now, and how can you communicate it to your customers, to your employees, to your investors. And I think you need to do it in a video narrative form. And I'll give you a couple secrets about how we do it at London Real and Silicon Real. And what we use is something I call the hero's journey. Now, like all great things in tech, we stole it from someone else. This is an idea from Joseph Conrad, the epic writer. And this is something you see so many times, you probably don't even recognize it anymore. This happens in great plays. This happens in the Bible. This happens in great movies. My favorite version of the hero's journey is Star Wars. The one for old people, the one with Luke Skywalker. I don't know this new stuff that you guys are watching. Who remembers Luke Skywalker? Who remembers him, right? Okay, you're dating yourself. Well, I remember Luke, and he's on this planet. It's the one with the 2 suns. It was kind of cool. He's this green young kid. He wants to do something with his life, not quite sure. Meets this crazy dude, Obi-Wan Kenobi, got the funny robe. Not sure if you're feeling him. Talks about some strange things, the Force. I don't know what's going on here. Tragic event happens. His parents get killed. Okay, now it's time to put up or shut up. So he said, let's go for it. Goes with Obi-Wan, starts learning about himself. He goes into the dark side, tries to test himself, goes into his innermost cave, has to figure out, what is the Force? How do I use it? Am I fighting against myself? Who's this Darth Vader cat, right? We're going to have to confront him. And it all happens in a big ordeal. And at the end, he's almost resurrected with a new point of view. And if you look at Luke at the very end, that scene where he's with Chewbacca and they're walking down the aisles with all those people, he's like a different guy. And he's now the one that's going to take you through, and fight the dark side for the rest of the 8 movies or whatever it is. And this is the hero's journey, and it's something we use all the time. In my TED Talk, I use this hero's journey. I used to be a greedy banker. Then I saw the light. I started broadcasting. I kept it real for you, sir. And then I learned all of these lessons, and I came back to tell you. And it's something that you can use in your company, and I think it's essential, and I think it's missed by so many people. I think people just don't take the time to tell their story. And I was speaking with the CEO of Metro Bank upstairs today. 2 billion market cap, that company, 2 billion pounds, that is. 7 years ago, it was a white piece of paper. And he articulates really well. He talks about culture. He talks about why he does what he does. And I looked at him and I said, there's 2 minutes of that on YouTube, and it looks like an ad. What's wrong? Why aren't you telling people about this? And this isn't just your customers. How many of your employees are out right now pitching business and misrepresenting your vision? I'm sure you've seen it before, where you're in a meeting and you're like, what did they just say? No, that's not what we're about. Well, guess what? That's your fault, because you haven't sat down and given a narrative in a video form and talked about what you're all about. And it's not just employees, it's investors as well. And we see this all the time in technology. Recently in the studio, I had Jeff Lynne. How many people know Jeff Lynne of Cedars? I think they're the world's largest equity crowdfunding platform out right now. Very impressive what they've done. They have a great what, right? A great product. They allow anyone with as little as 10 pounds to invest in a company and enjoy the upside, right? No more Kickstarter. No more Oculus Rift, we don't get the upside, right? It's a great product, but it doesn't really tell the whole story. And when I start talking to Jeff, I find out that he used to be a lawyer. He was a young lawyer when he was in New York City. Worked for a famous law firm that was mentioned in the movie Wall Street. I always give him a hard time about that. And then he moved to London, but he found that all he was doing was advising on mergers and acquisitions. Big bank buy another big bank. He was actually destroying value. And he's like, is this what I want to do with the rest of my life? I'm sure some of you have had this same question. I did. And so he went and he quit. And he went and got his MBA at Oxford, where he met his co-founder, Carlos. And they started talking together like lawyers do. And they realized there was a real gap in the market. You know, certain investors weren't being taken care of, the small ones, and certain companies couldn't get funding. And so they sat down with a strict legal platform, because that's what they're good at, that's their USP. And they built it so no one gets burned when these companies pop. And so everyone is protected. And they were the first FSA-regulated equity crowdfunding platform here in the UK. And if you look at their website and their company now, you can see bits of that culture in there. They are serious about what they do. They actually stand between the company and the investor when it comes to the equity stake, and they make sure everyone gets paid. Very serious about this. And yet, without knowing that story, Cedars gets grouped in with all the other most recent people that are coming to the party now. Equity crowdfunding, here it is. Look at these features. Looks the same, but the story, that's what makes me want to believe. That vision, they've been there for 8 years. They built this from scratch. They are here to protect you. That's what I buy into. And that's super important. And I think tech, funny enough, misses it more than anyone else. And I don't know why. I think we're so focused on product. We're so focused on the digital side of it that we forget the human side. And we forget that the founder's story, the co-founder, the head of product, head of marketing, we need to hear from you, because we really relate to human stories more than anything. And I was at a tech startup here last week in London, and it's going very well. They've got 100 employees. They just got a 20 million pound investment in their company. And the CEO came in and he said, Brian, the first thing the investor said to me when he walked in the room was, I saw your episode on Silicon Reel. And I saw Brian grill you, and it was unedited, unscripted. You handled yourself. You talked about your vision, and I could tell that I could invest in you. And I've heard this countless times when it comes to technology. And so again, this is important for everyone. It's important for your customers. How many people have passed joining your company because they look at it from the outside and they don't get it. They don't see your vision. Maybe they met you for coffee. Maybe you're having a bad day. Maybe you don't feel like talking about your hero's journey that day. But it's your responsibility to capture that on video and have it somewhere. And use it for those people that could be your employees. What about that investor that just passed because they really weren't feeling the energy? I mean, I've spoken to all of the top venture cap people here. I mean, they're in bed with you for 7 to 10 years. They want to get to know who you are, longer than most marriages. So it's important to have that vision down. And I just want to end with a note that I learned from another one of our friends. How many people know who this is? Gary Vaynerchuk, Gary V, very fast-talking, aggressive New Yorker, but he's very smart when it comes to social media marketing. And he's been on YouTube, as he likes to remind me, much before I was. I had him in my studio and I said, Gary, in 2011, I knew YouTube was going to be an important platform. And he said, great, Brian. I realized that in 2006. So I gave him that one. But Gary has an expression. He says, I day trade people's attention. And it's a great concept, and you should all think about that today. What are you doing with your customers' attention right now? What are you doing with it? Are you selling to them? Are you showing them a quick video? Or are you telling your why? Are you explaining your journey? Are you talking about your whole vision for the future? And if you're not doing that, then I stress, take the time out and really put your vision and capture it in video. And do me a favor, do it with a few cameras, do it in HD, get someone to ask you some hard questions, no softballs. We've all seen the corporate video, right? It puts us to sleep. People want more of this, and your customers want it more than you think. Your employees want it. A lot of times your employees just didn't be reminded. When I gave my TED Talk, our whole company just got excited again, and we forget that as founders because we're worried about the money, we're worried about everything else. So do me a favor, think about this, and produce something that everyone can get behind and see your vision. Thank you.